Jenkins here again. Another episode of our weekly Facebook Live program. And today we're going to be talking about, in New Jersey, what's going on with sheriff sales, foreclosures, evictions, and utilities. What's the latest and greatest from the governor and whoever else might have a say-so about these things. So, should I start off, do you think?
Sure, Jeff. Our many viewers might notice that we're doing this one live from my office today.
Right.
So you can actually, over my ear, you see my sons when they were very young and in my wedding photo right there. So this is the big difference. But today, Jeff's going to get started. This is our final
broadcast. I was at that
broadcast.
wedding, what, 28 years ago?
Very good. You were at the wedding 28 years ago. That's good that you knew that. 28 in a month. This is our last broadcast of the year, Jeff.
Last broadcast of the year, because we're not going to do it next Thursday. That's New Year's Eve. We're going to take a break, and then we'll be with you again the following Thursday. We'll have a presentation.
And what you're going to start is really, it's important because next time we're broadcasting is January, and I expect there to be the heat turned up on people who are behind with their bills to begin in January. There's a lot of ambiguity about the government orders to protect people who are behind.
Right.
But Jeff, what we talk about a lot, and then you'll get into is that for every debtor or person who owes a bill that is allowed not to pay, there's an equally terrible reaction for the people who expect that money. And the best example is our clients who are calling us that own duplexes. They own a home and they expect rent from the other side to help them pay the mortgage. So the governor and other government officials are telling the people who can't pay the rent that they don't have to. And those are usually the people that call us. They call you. They haven't paid the rent. They're getting evicted. They call you. We're getting calls from the other side now, right?
Yes. Which isn't shocking.
Because because the tenant is allowed not to pay rent.
Yeah, they've gone for 9 months and haven't gotten any rent to pay their mortgage from the rental property.
So now we're getting the calls. So that's why I think Jenkins and Clayman is uniquely qualified to help people who are behind with rent, mortgage payments, and the like, because we have dealt with both sides, the people collecting the rent and the people who have to pay the rent. And we have a whole law firm dedicated to help people behind with their bills.
Exactly.
So let's get into the meat and potatoes, Jeffrey.
Okay. Let's talk about evictions. In New Jersey, the governor started with these executive orders in March of this year.
Right.
And one of the things that he did early on was he suspended all evictions. And we're talking about evictions, whether you have a landlord or whether it's a mortgage company who acquired your property at sheriff sale and now wants to have you removed so that the mortgage company can sell the property to somebody else. Either way, he said there can't be any evictions until 60 days after the health crisis is over. And
well, Jeff, wait a second. You said it starts March. I think it started March 25th. So 60 days later would be May 25th.
That would be true. The thing is, every month we've got another executive order that just extends things. And the most recent one was Monday, the 21st of December, the winter solstice.
The longest night of the year.
Yes, the shortest day of the year. And that order said exactly the same thing. And so the dates that we're working with right now, and I think the governor is going to continue to move these things out, as time goes by here. But so 12/21/20 was the last executive order that was issued. These orders last 30 days, so that order is going to be over with 1/20/21. Add 60 days, you get 3/20/21, and that's our current date for when there can be evictions, unless the governor changes it, which he probably will. So,
but Jeff, we see in court there are some exceptions. There are people. Well, I guess I'm interrupting you because you were going to talk about the fact that landlord-tenant court is still happening. There's still people receiving summons and complaints.
yes.
In that sense, so people are getting sued if they're not paying the rent. But we also wanted to talk about if the property is abandoned or if there's health and safety issues, right?
Well, um, yeah, if the property is abandoned or it's a commercial property,
Commercials.
the governor's order doesn't apply. So those people, those mortgage companies can proceed, or landlords, whatever, can proceed with evictions.
Okay.
I'm saying mortgage companies. And you're right, Eric, that you can still file we call it a summary dispossess action is the correct term for it in New Jersey. We say it's landlord tenant court, so people understand what we're talking about. But it is a summary dispossess action, and a landlord or mortgage company can file a summary dispossess action right now, and you'll get a summons, a kind of summons and complaint, but it won't have a date on there for the court hearing. And the Supreme Court of New Jersey directed at the outset of this pandemic, and that there would be no landlord-tenant court trials. No trials in landlord-tenant court. So what that means is the landlord, the mortgage company can file a complaint, but there's not going to be a trial date because the Supreme Court said no landlord-tenant court trials.
But Jeff, if someone receives a summons and complaint, that's an important legal document. And regardless of what the Supreme Court says, the legal advice we give everyone who receives a summons and complaint in any situation is you must speak to an attorney.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. We try to make that point when we talk about these things. Just because there's a moratorium on evictions or utility shutoffs or sheriff sales or foreclosures doesn't mean that you don't owe the money. Every month that goes by that you don't make payments, it's that much more money you owe whoever we're talking about. And at some point in time, that money's going to come due. And you're going to need to pay it or else there will be consequences. And that would be, so if you do get a landlord-tenant complaint, even though there can't be court right now, it would serve you well to contact a law firm like ours because we could tell you what to expect going forward, at least because if when they allow evictions, you can't snap your fingers and come up with the money, then you're going to get evicted. Unless you see us and we can set up, by filing a bankruptcy, a plan for you to pay back the rent arrears that you owe.
Right, a couple of points. If you've fallen behind with your rent and things are better now, your landlord's still better for you financially. Your landlord may not accept just one monthly payment now.
He might not. With a mortgage, they want it all or nothing.
If that happens and you're feeling better financially, you should call us right away because we can file a bankruptcy plan that requires either the mortgage company or the landlord to accept the payments. And for most of our plans, we're able to wipe out most or all of your other debt, such as credit cards and medical bills. Mm-hmm. And then we work on a payment plan to catch up with your rent or your mortgage. It's a wonderful opportunity to save your house. And especially when Jeff started to talk about summons and complaints in either foreclosure or an eviction action, you must call an attorney right away. And Jeff, we prefer they call us.
Absolutely, we know what we're doing. and we can help. And the bankruptcy is the perfect vehicle for dealing with this sort of situation, for stopping a bad thing from happening, an eviction, and making a plan that would be court ordered so the landlord would have to accept it to pay back your rent arrears, or if we're talking about a mortgage company, your mortgage arrears.
And just to, even though it's not on our agenda today, I just spoke to a gentleman today who's behind with his car payment. There's a co-signer, so there's less we can do, but we can do just what we can do with rent and mortgages, meaning stop we don't call them evictions, we call them repossessions. Stop the repossession and resume payments next month. and the car finance company, which sent him this note that they wanted $3,200 up front or something. No, they're just going to accept the regular monthly payment. As Jeff just said, you will save your car, your house, your apartment, whatever.
Right. Exactly. So back to evictions.
Sure.
Do we think?
I think our audience is clamoring for more, Jeff.
Okay. I mentioned that the New Jersey Supreme Court directed that there be no landlord-tenant court trials. They also said that if you file a summons and complaint against someone, there must be arbitration or mediation with a individual appointed by the court to see if you could work something out. If the landlord and the tenant could work something out to help the landlord catch up. But again, you can go through these things, and you might not come to an agreement, but we can make an agreement for you.
And I've talked about this before. It is a strange situation when we can deal with landlords that have hundreds and hundreds of units or hundreds of buildings even, or more. I keep moving us to mortgage companies, but mortgage companies, which are the largest banks in the world. And as Jeff said, we develop a plan and it gets accepted or confirmed is the legal term. And you, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, can tell the bank, one of the largest companies in the world, that yes, they have to accept your plan. It's a wonderful evening of the playing field. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is, because you're talking to Jeff and I, who have, 60, 70 years of experience between us in doing this work, we're able to pretty much get what we tell you will happen, will happen. We won't give you a false sense of comfort. But as long as you're talking to us and tell us the truth, and we can then get back to you right away with a plan to make sure you will not lose your car, your house, your apartment. And we've talked in prior episodes about the IRS and things like that as well. But Jeff, I keep pushing us away, but you keep pulling us back. So let's, are we still with evictions?
Yeah, I think so. There's a couple more things. As you're aware, most probably last year, the CDC said from Halloween until the end of the year, there could be no evictions in the United States. We really don't care what the CDC said because the state orders are more protective and they're controlling. They do more than what the CDC was doing. And so we don't even have to worry about that right now. It's just, we just focus on the state court or the state orders from the governor, executive orders from the governor. Landlord-tenant trials can take place if there's an emergency. And to certify that there's an emergency, the landlord has to fill out certain forms that the Supreme Court developed explaining what the emergency is. And I think generally, Eric, these things would have to do with health and safety, public
Right.
health and safety reasons would be the type of emergency that you think about. People might think also, we talked about CDC, but is there any federal law that prohibits the landlord from evicting you? And there are some things in certain circumstances, but again, we don't even need to go there. It's just going to confuse you because the state law prohibits evictions. That's all we need to focus on right now for evictions.
And again, if the money is there that you can start paying your rent beginning in February, we're doing this December 24th, beginning of the next month, and I'm already considering we're in January.
Yeah.
If the money's there to start paying the rent in February, as Jeff said earlier, you're going to have to pay it sooner or later. So by filing a bankruptcy in January, the landlord will accept the February's rent, and you won't fall further behind.
Right, and you're not going to be worried about it
Yeah.
anymore.
No more phone calls, letters.
Yeah, you're not going to wait carrying around your shoulders that, oh my goodness, when are they going to lift this eviction ban? Could it be next week? Could it be next month? And then what happens? You wouldn't have to worry about any of that. It'd all be taken care of.
Jeff, I think we're moving to our next subject for the day.
We are. We want to talk about sheriff sales next, I think.
Great.
And
in New Jersey, sheriff sales are a judicial proceeding. In some states, they're not. Jonathan has another question for
Right.
us.
So
Should we?
how long can the rent be paid back over time in bankruptcy? Jonathan, if you have a lease, like a tenant would, a residential lease, and you want to keep that lease, you can keep it or get rid of it when a bankruptcy is filed. You have to make that choice. If you're going to keep it and there are arrears, the arrears are supposed to be cured promptly. And what promptly means is not defined in the bankruptcy code, but it's become defined by judicial decisions. But we're kind of in special circumstances now, and we feel that courts would be much more lenient with a more extended period of time for paying back rent arrears because of the environment that we're talking about here, the COVID pandemic environment. So we would expect that the arrears could be paid back over years, literally, through the Chapter 13 trustee.
Right, and a lot of it depends on how long the client has been there as well.
Sure.
In other words, if you've been in your apartment for 7 years, I think the judge would be very amenable to a longer payout. If you moved in March and due to COVID, you've made no payments to the landlord at all, then a many-year payback might get some feedback, negative feedback. And that's why we run that scroll on the bottom that says this video can't be used for specific legal advice. But basically, the sure thing is the moment you file bankruptcy, the eviction stopped. Absolutely, as long as there's no judgment of eviction against you. And how long? More than you certainly have 18 months or more, and sometimes 3 or 4 years to pay it back.
Right. Okay, so let's just talk about sheriff sales very quickly and what's going on with sheriff sales. The governor's orders have said that there will be no more sheriff sales until he says otherwise. And so we're still in that posture. The sheriffs are not conducting sheriff sales except for sales on abandoned properties or commercial properties. But residential properties where the tenant is, where the somebody's at the homeowner is in the property, no sheriff sales.
Right.
For right now. And he's not going to start them again, I'm sure, until after everybody gets their vaccinations or something.
Yeah, it's really, Jeff, said that with a smile, but the fact is our sheriff sales system really is an auction system in a room in a county courthouse. And there have been court cases that, of course, the statute requires advertising because you want as many people to show up at a sheriff sale as possible to get the best price for the bank, a homeowner, whomever. And something about people showing up in crowded rooms right now that they're not encouraging.
Right. One reason. Be difficult. So that's what's going on with sheriff sales. As far as foreclosures are concerned, in New Jersey, if there's a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac backed mortgage loan, the lender can't do a foreclosure. They started one, it has to have stopped. If they haven't started it, they can't start it. Beyond that, any other mortgage company can foreclose on a property. They just can't take the property to sheriff's sale. But curiously, in checking with our colleagues who represent the mortgage companies, the mortgage companies have told their attorneys in New Jersey not to go forward with foreclosures right now, no matter whether they can or, even if they could. And so Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac backed loans, just to put that in perspective, all federally backed loans constitute about 70% of the mortgages. So 30% are not federally backed. Those 30% could certainly do foreclosures. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac don't comprise all 70% of the federally backed mortgages. We're talking about FHA, VA, USDA, all the different governmental agencies that could back a mortgage loan. And so right now in New Jersey, it's kind of being done voluntarily by these mortgage companies that could foreclose. They're not doing it. And they've told their attorneys not to do it. And because even if they did start a foreclosure, they couldn't take it to sheriff's sale, couldn't take the property.
That is interesting. That is interesting, just as, excuse me, an inside baseball kind of thing. your writ runs out also, and it can get very expensive. Meaning, without knowing when the sheriff sales are going to be allowed, the mortgage companies may have chosen not to go forward with their foreclosure because they don't know when the sheriff sales are going to be. So it may not be just to help the homeowner; it might be a dollars and cents decision
for them in terms of paying legal fees, because,
Right.
like Eric said, writs of eviction only have a certain shelf life, a year, 2 years, and after that's over with, then you've got to go through this process again. The lender would have to pay more attorney's fees, and they don't want to do that, I guess.
But Jeff, we are running into people who may lose their homes, completely lose their homes if they don't pay the real estate taxes, right?
Yeah,
And that's happening now.
yeah. We did want to mention, and we haven't talked about utilities yet. So
Okay.
should we do that?
No, I want to talk about,
Okay.
I think that's, if your lights shut off, that sucks. But man, if they take your house from you because you didn't pay your real estate taxes, that's worse. So let's make sure we talk about that.
The things that aren't covered by moratoriums that we're discussing today. One would be property tax sales. They're conducted by the municipalities, and they've been conducting them. And they would have a property tax sale if you're behind on property taxes or water or sewer that's owed to the municipality or a governmental entity. And those can still go on. So somebody could get a tax sale certificate on your property. And if you don't redeem that in 2 years, then they can foreclose on the tax sale certificate. So if they got a tax sale certificate regarding your property a year and a half ago, 6 months after that, if you don't redeem the certificate by paying back everything that you owe and the tax, water, or sewer items, they can do a foreclosure, and it's a fast thing that happens, and it takes about 2 months, and they go to court and they get a deed for your property, and that would be a shame to see people or see anyone lose their property that way. So just, know that if there's any type of property tax sale issues, you should really see an attorney.
Jeff, filing a bankruptcy would stop that type of foreclosure, right?
Absolutely. It would stop it dead in its tracks. And just like the other things we've been talking about, you have time to repay the arrears that exist through a Chapter 13 plan.
All right, why don't you do your utilities?
Okay. Let's just,
unless you want to.
yeah, I did want to mention also, so we've got this business with the tax sales can still go on. Judgments can still be entered. Creditors can sue people in New Jersey. They can get judgments against them. They can collect on the judgment by doing a wage garnishment or taking money out of your account, your checking account, your savings account. All those things can happen right now in New Jersey, and they aren't covered by the moratorium.
That is very important.
Yeah.
Again, it goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of the show. If you're sued, you receive a summons and complaint, whether it's eviction, foreclosure, or real estate taxes, or as Jeff just talked about, you're just being sued for money because you didn't pay a credit card or a medical bill. See an attorney right away.
Yeah, absolutely. So utilities, we still have a moratorium on utility shutoffs. Initially, it was voluntary. The utility companies did it because the governor asked them to. But since October, the governor has been issuing his executive orders saying there can be no shutoffs for utilities. And when we're talking about utilities, we're talking about water, heat, and electricity. So gas, heat, even.
All sorts of hot water.
Right.
Yeah. How about cable and?
Well, as far as the ones that we just talked about, that his order expires the 15th of March, 2021.
Okay.
And unless he does another order, which he probably will, then that moratorium would be over with on that date. And the cable and telecom providers were prohibited from shutting service off. As best I could see, that prohibition ended in the middle of November, November 15th, 2020. But some other things survived, and that would be before they can shut your service off, they have to offer you a 12-month repayment plan that's interest-free. They can't ask for any money down or any kind of a deposit. They can, it's just, they have to offer that 12-month repayment plan. You've got 12 months to pay back whatever you're behind, and plus your normal service that you use as time goes forward. If you have a student, a child who's in school and needs the cable or telecom services to participate in school, they can't shut your service off. And they have to ask you that question before they do shut your service off. You have a child that needs the service for school purposes. If the service is shut off right now and you acquire a child, I mean, you could actually
Adopt.
A child could move into the household, or could be that a young child becomes of an age where they have to start participating in school, and they need the cable or telecom services to do that. And if that's the case, then they must turn your service back on.
Well, there's a more interesting way to get it turned on. We typically recommend that clients file bankruptcy to get it turned on.
Well, there's always that.
But that's a good way.
And the good thing about that is you don't have to worry about the 12-month repayment plan. We would erase whatever you owed, and you would just pay for the service that you used after the bankruptcy was filed.
Right.
So I think we're good for today, don't you?
Jeff, I think we're going to wish everyone a Merry Christmas
Yes.
and a Happy New Year,
Merry
because we're not
Christmas and
coming back
Happy New Year.
until January.
And we'll see you 2 weeks from today. Thanks for tuning in, and stay safe, and God bless.